Thanks for tuning into Higher Rock Education. A basic economic and business principle is profit is maximized at the point where the marginal revenue derived from selling a good or service equals the marginal cost of producing the good or service. The demand and marginal revenue curves are only equal in perfectly competitive markets. In all other market structures, the marginal revenue at a given output may be less than the demand. For many students, this appears to be a violation of the law of supply and demand. This lesson explains why it's not. Marginal revenue equals the revenue obtained from the sale of an additional unit. Marginal cost is the cost to manufacture an additional unit. Businesses will continue to produce a good or service as long as the revenue derived from the sale of an additional unit exceeds the cost to produce it. Isn't the marginal revenue the price of the good? After all, when a good is sold, the added revenue equals the price it was sold for. True, but what if the seller had to lower the price on all the units it sold to gain that added sale? Then it would gain revenue from the added sale, but lose revenues from every item it could have sold at a higher price. Let's use an example to illustrate this. Assume you produce a unique product, iGogs. iGogs have a very limited market, and you're the only producer of iGogs. At $800, you could only sell one iGog, so your marginal revenue would also equal $800. However, if you want to sell two iGogs, you would need to drop your price to $700. This is point A on graph 1. Now, to sell three iGogs, you would need to drop your price to $600, which is point B. Now, what's important is that you could not sell one iGog at $800 and one iGog at $700 and one iGog at $600. You would need to lower your price for all the buyers if you want to sell three iGogs. So by lowering your price, you gain more in sales, but you lose the revenue from the first two sales. Graph 1 is the demand curve for iGogs because it shows the quantity demanded at any given price. Table 1 itemizes your marginal and total revenues. The total revenue after selling one iGog equals $800. The total revenue from selling two iGogs equals $1,400, or the price $700 times two iGogs sold. The marginal revenue from selling the second iGog equals $600, or the difference between $1,400 and $800. Note that the marginal revenue of $600 is less than the price of $700. This is because both of the iGogs were sold at the lower price. Now, when our table is completed, it looks like this. Now, let's add the marginal revenue curve to our graph. You can see that when two iGogs were sold, the marginal revenue equals $600. Note the marginal revenue curve is below the demand curve at all points except for one where one unit is produced. Again, this is because the price equals the marginal revenue only for the first unit sold. Because you had to reduce your price to sell additional units. Marginal revenue would continue to equal the price if you operated in a perfectly competitive market where you didn't have to reduce your price to sell the second or third iGogs. How will you price your iGogs if you want to maximize your profit? Well, that depends on your marginal cost curve. So I've added a marginal cost curve to graph 3. Note that the marginal cost equals the marginal revenue when three iGogs are produced. What would people be willing to pay if you produce three iGogs? Well, the demand curve is used to determine the price at a given output. So at three iGogs, you would be able to charge $600. This is seen on graph 4 by extending the line up from 3 units to the demand curve and then over to the price. So if you charge $700, you wouldn't sell your iGogs. If you charge $500, you could sell more iGogs, but your cost to produce the fourth iGog would exceed $500. So you would not want to do that. Now, I hope this has helped in understanding why the marginal revenue curve is below the demand curve and how the price is determined. Is this a violation of the law of supply and demand? Well, yes and no. Yes, in that the production level may not be exactly where the supply and demand curves intersect, but no, because changes in the supply or demand of a good or service would be reflected in the marginal revenue and the marginal cost curves. For example, if the demand for IGOGs increases, a price increase would also increase the marginal revenue, thereby increasing production. Likewise, if an improvement in technology increases the supply, the marginal cost would be less, which would prompt companies to increase production. To learn more about the relationships between marginal revenue, demand, price, and production, please visit our lessons related to market structures.
To learn more, please visit our website for our free economics lessons at www.higherrockeducation.org. All our lessons include text, interactive exercises, review questions, and a related scripture lesson. Thank you.